Caveman is certainly a creative film. This is not going to be for everybody. I'm not even entirely sure it's for me, but I can certainly appreciate it. This was released in 1981. It's directed by Carl Gottlieb and written by Rudy Luca and Carl Gottlieb, and stars Ringo Starr, Dennis Quaid, Shelley Long, and Barbara Bach. And for me, the reason it didn't work is because of the absence of dialogue, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But I do have appreciation for the creativity. Some of the creatures in this, there are some dinosaur kind of creatures which just look absolutely horrendous, but in a way that's kind of charming. And as long as you don't take this too seriously, it can be a very fun, silly film with some really good performances. Basically, this is set in 1 zillion BC, and it's all about cavemen, mostly focusing on a character called Atouk, played by Ringo Starr, and part of it is about his relationship, and we have elements of survival here, and there are several girls he might end up with, but I won't say too much more about that. And the narrative is fine. Honestly, I didn't find it that interesting, but I did also at the same time enjoy watching the performances. So the narrative, maybe not the most compelling, but the concept is pretty fascinating. And as a Shelley Long fan, I love her. She's the only reason I watched this. She was brilliant in it. I'm biased, but I did love watching her performance. Visually, it's very creative. I don't know how believable it is, how natural it is, if the terrain is exactly what the terrain or the costumes would have been 1 zillion BC. I guess by saying 1 zillion BC, they can kind of get around any potential inaccuracies. But it does look exactly like I would have expected it to look, so that works well as well. The only thing that meant I wasn't fully engaged is the absence of dialogue. But if you go onto Wikipedia, and I didn't know this when I was watching this, but if you go onto Wikipedia, we actually have a list of the words that the characters use in this caveman language, and I didn't realise or didn't pick up on the fact that certain words actually meant something, and that must be so hard because it's technically doing a film in a foreign language. For example, and this is what I'm taking from Wikipedia, we have... well, kaka means poop, and we have kuda means come, and ul means food, puka means pain, and if that is true, and those words do actually make sense in the context of what's happening, that must be really difficult to learn, because you are essentially having to learn, albeit a very small selection of words, but having to learn this kind of foreign caveman language and make it make sense with your emotions and your actions, and that's really impressive. So I have a lot of praise for the cast, and I have a lot of praise for the crew for making this fun, relatively engaging, and definitely creative. But for me personally, I didn't love the narrative, and I didn't love the absence of proper dialogue, because that is something that I personally gravitate towards when I'm looking for a film. If there's a good dialogue, conversations, that draws me in, and I'm also very narrative driven. So it is kind of lacking the things that I normally look for, but it's not lacking in Shelley Long, so that worked well for me. It's fun, it's silly, it's very creative. It will appeal to some people and not to others. It's a good film to have on in the background. If you're doing other things and you just want to film on for company, it's definitely going to be good for that. But at the same time, if you're in the mood for something that you don't need to take too seriously, then it could work well as well. Caveman is not necessarily my kind of film, but there are a lot of positive things about it. And as a Shelley Long fan, I'm glad I've watched it. If you do check it out, let me know what you think of it. I doubt I'd ever watch it again, but it's certainly one that I think will stick with me.